Dan RadioStyle, hope everybody out there's having themselves a groovy day. Enhance your belief in what you desire. And this is kind of a really important concept, and I've talked about it in a few ways, and I'm kind of going to overlap a couple stories, probably link those below, so you can maybe check out the couple stories. An example that I'm going to link is the concept Neville Goddard talks about feeling natural about your wish fulfilled, feeling natural about it. So that's one component to this. Now, our beliefs certainly need to be something that we can actually wrap our heads around and actually believe them. I'm not saying that you have it right this second, though you do, right? When you imagine it in your mind, technically, at least from a higher dimensional standpoint, at least for sure, you've got it, and then it kind of starts to solidify, or really kind of, as the way I see it, solidifies down into third dimension. But it needs to be something that you can believe in. Example. A couple examples maybe, right? One thing a lot of people do is they want to try to enhance their income. And so one of the easiest ways for a lot of people to think about, ooh, how could I get a lot of money really easily, fast? Well, I could win the lottery. I'm not saying you can't win the lottery. I'm not saying that that's a bad idea. In fact, I had someone just ask me yesterday if it was okay to imagine winning the lottery. And how I explain it is, well, first and foremost, what my recommendation would be is to focus on more wealth, more income. Imagine what it would be like to be very, very wealthy. What would your life be? How would it be different? What would you do differently? You imagine that and keep that as your focus. Then go ahead and wish to win the lotto, or think about the lotto, or whatever, or keep buying the lotto. Actually, I didn't say think about it. I said keep buying your lotto tickets, but imagine being wealthy. Now, the reason I say it that way is because focuses you on enhancing your wealth. And by enhancing your wealth, that actually tells the universe, hey, any number of ways that you would like to bring me more wealth, I am open to that. Thank you very much. Looking forward to it. Awesome. Looking forward to it. When you're working on manifesting winning the lottery, you're a very specific approach that you are telling the universe, hey, look, out of all the options you want, out of all the possibilities out there, I'm only interested in one way, and that's this way. Now, that's fine if you want to do that, but you've really still got to look at the sheer fact of the matter that lotteries happen. They happen every so many days, right? So no matter what, that wealth can only be delivered to you maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever. You got to look at the odds. I don't mean like the odds should ever hold you back, but one person typically wins, right? Sometimes 2 or 3. Also, you need to look at the fact that generally speaking, a lot of times when people win a very large amount of money right up front, they tend to blow it all, and a lot of them end up bankrupt because their wealth consciousness hasn't really expanded to the amount of wealth they now possess. When in reality, what you want is wealth. And I don't care where it comes from. It can come from the lottery, sure. It can come from work, sure. It can come from new ventures that I've done. It can come from stocks. It can come from bonds, right? It can come from people I know just donating to me. Crowdsource, crowdfunding, whatever, the GoFundMe, whatever these sites are called, right? Could come from maybe Patreon and stuff like that, or PayPal if you're, doing a YouTube channel and you're trying to get more of that money kind of being sent to you, or people to subscribe to you on a regular basis. Money can come in a lot of different ways. Shoot, you can find it on the ground. Pamela makes me think of her. She was picking up all the change, and she's got like a little thing where she's been collecting all the change that she finds on the ground, which is kind of cool. So the belief needs to be something that, one, you can wrap your head around. So again, becoming uber rich, that's a little bit challenging when, maybe right now in your income, you're making $100,000 a year or $50,000 a year or whatever your amount is, right? And you're trying to enhance that. Well, let's enhance it to a significant amount. Let's think about what that would mean, and let's start incrementing our way towards it. The reason you do it is because it's easier to believe. It's not that I'm necessarily wanting to hold you back or have beliefs that maybe say, why shouldn't I be able to go from $15 an hour to $1,000 an hour? Dan, that's your limitation. Well, you're right. That's a limit. You're right. You're 100% correct. But unless you've sat down and done the numbers with what $1,000 an hour works out to, and then how many hours you're probably going to work a day and how many hours you would work in a week, and start to really calculate out what that means as far as money coming back to you, right? And then you think about that, and then you're like, all right, so if I had $1,000 an hour, what would I be doing differently in my life? How would my life be different? Well, I'd have a nicer house. All right, well, what's that like? Now that I've got to imagine this newer, larger house, what is it like? So I start to try to imagine it, or maybe I start finding pictures. Okay, well, great. Now I've got a bigger house. What kind of car would I drive? Okay, well, I'd be driving probably a really, really nice, maybe Ferrari. Maybe I had a Range Rover, and maybe I've got some sort of other practical car. Well, I don't know, right? You start breaking down all the little pieces, but when you're talking about making a slightly smaller jump, well, that's not as hard to imagine what your life would be like if you were, say, making twice as much an hour as you are currently. Maybe instead of making $40,000 a year, now you're jumping up to $60,000 a year, which is a really nice jump. It's a 50% jump. That's a big jump at one time. And if one does that and you're somehow surviving on $40,000 and suddenly you're making 60, trust me, your life takes a totally different direction. Now all of a sudden you can afford things that you never thought you could. And again, you're not necessarily rich by any standards, but that's a significant income change. And again, easier to get that belief in it. Again, if I try to say, well, but I want to make $1,000 an hour, and right now I'm making $15 an hour, then you're like, and that's what I'm going to manifest. And you're like, okay. And this is to all of you that are like, hey, Dan, don't hold me back. Don't limit me. You're right. But when you're talking about, maybe 1,000-fold increase, one of the things that starts to happen in your mind is you start to doubt it. You start to have little thoughts pop up. Hey, you sure that's a lot of money? You realize how much that actually is? Like, what kind of job's going to pay you that kind of money? Where are you going to, all those thoughts start popping into your head. So now you've got to deal with that. Now you've got a bunch of negativity kind of firing at you because what you're shooting for is a bit extreme. Maybe a bit extreme. I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying it when you can feel natural about it, and that's kind of what Neville's talking about, when you can feel natural about what you're asking for, you ask fewer questions. It becomes an easier acceptance for your ego, for your higher self, for your conscious self, whatever parts of yourself that seem to do a lot of the thinking. It becomes easier for that part of ourselves. It makes it simpler. Now, there's examples such as maybe trying to get a better physique. I know a lot of people, they'll go out and they'll spend gobs of money on protein powders and shakes and all this stuff, and they go to the gym, they get their thing at the gym, and they maybe get some time with a coach, right? Spend some time getting better at working out, and they do really, really good when the guy's pushing them, and they go and they do it 3-4 days a week, and they have these amazing workouts. They're drinking their protein powders and blah blah blah. But when they were going into it, they had this thought that I'm going to become huge. I'm going to be ripped. I'm going to have this perfect six-pack abs, and I'm going to be just buff. When I take my shirt off, women are going to be like, oh my God, can I touch you? And you're going to be like, of course you can. Why wouldn't you be able to? Come on, that's silly, right? You're going to be like that. And you're going to be all very, very proud of yourself. And you're planning on getting this in 6 months because, frankly, most of us here in the United States especially, and most of the Western world, our patience is about this short. If I can't have it right now, well, hell, I don't want it. I call us a microwave society. If we can't have it within 3.5 minutes or less, I'm not interested. So for a lot of us, the idea of going to the gym and getting buff and ripped and getting girls and having them throwing their underwear at you and they're flinging their underwear at you, whatever they do, I don't know. It's probably what Tiger Woods used to experience, and he wasn't even buff. He was just a great golfer and super rich. But when you've got these situations happening in your mind, it can be a little hard to wrap your head around, especially after you spend a little time in the gym, you're working out 3 days a week, and you're going home ridiculously sore. And you look in the mirror and you notice a difference. You notice some curvature, some development, and you're about 1.5 months, 2 months into it, and you're starting to sort of see where the six-pack once was, and it's starting to sort of show itself again. But you get frustrated because you're not seeing the results you wanted. You're talking about doing something at a rapid pace where your body's not necessarily even capable of putting on that level of muscle that quickly. You get stretch marks, for crying out loud, probably, if you did. Or you have to dope up and take some sort of steroids or something like that, right, to get that extra oomph, to get that extra human growth hormones and all those crazy things that people do to make themselves absolutely insanely huge very quickly. In fact, Sylvester Stallone, this is one of the things that he's kind of famous for, was his ability before he got into the Rocky movies and all that. He worked out a lot, but he actually at one point, I want to say it was before a lot of the stuff he did, it's the one where he got all the superheroes, all the old action stars in the one movie. They're great movies. They're cheesy. If you go into them and you want to see them, just, not expect it to be a good movie, you're like, oh yeah, it's a pretty good movie. When you go into it and you're like, yeah, this has got all my favorite action heroes from the 80s and stuff, and 90s. Oh, it's going to be awesome. And then you go and watch it and you're like, oh my God, that was horrible. So again, if you go into it with the right, I wish I could remember the movie. I've got like all 3 of them, or at least 3 of them. I don't know how many more of them. But again, he took a bunch of drugs, a bunch of growth hormones because he was so worried about getting huge fast. Again, it's got to be something that is natural within you. Now, in his case, it is natural. Like, he got really, really big, got a trainer. He's done it before. He just wanted to get back in shape because he was a little older than he was when he was doing Rambo and Rocky and all those movies. So, again, he had to do something a little different. So, one of those things where a lot of us are heading in a direction. We're trying to hold something, but we need to make the steps to it legitimate. We've got to make those steps believable, natural. So that's a big part of it. Is what you're asking for something that you can get behind, something that you can believe, something that you can wrap your heads around? Or is what you're asking for something that's even impossible for you to believe? Great example too, and this will probably be the last example I'll give, but it's a fun one. And it's something that people should be able to do, and there's no reason why they can't. But I will say the way people go about it sometimes is a little goofy. So there's been people that have hit me up with the idea of trying to attract someone that's famous. Now, what a lot of these people, I think, in their mind are imagining is trying to get this famous person to reach out to them, talk to them, somehow choose them, all these things, right? Well, again, that starts to get into this place where it becomes very, very challenging to believe. Why would they show up at your house? Really? Do they normally show up at your house? Have they ever showed up at your house? Do they drive in front of your house? Well, no to the answer to all those. Well, then why in your mind are you going to be able to rationalize how this can happen? You're not. You're going to fight it every step of the way. You're going to be like, there's no way I'm ever going to meet this famous guy. There's no way. Well, yeah, because of the way you're going about it. It's not a very natural way. The way you're going about it isn't necessarily the right way to do it. So if you're interested in meeting, say, a famous person, for example, then one of the ways you can make it maybe a little more approachable, a little more believable, is you figure out maybe there's a place they hang out on a regular basis. Do a little digging, you find out there's this restaurant they go to, typically Tuesday nights, whatever. So now you find yourself starting to show up at that restaurant on Tuesday nights, and you just start making a habit of that. Well, now the odds and opportunity to meet this famous person are actually possible. You're actually there where it could happen. Now he doesn't have to randomly show up at your house, what he's never done before. But now, in fact, all he needs to do is possibly walk by you and say something. Or you could look at him and get eye contact and start from that standpoint. But again, it starts to take on a bit more of a believable feel to it. It starts to take on that fact that it's a more incremental step than just this giant leap. And that can be the difference between your success and your failure. Is only in that you might be shooting so far past where you are right now that it's hard to imagine, so you're not really doing the imaginal work properly. You're not imagining what it would be like if you had this thing already. If you know that you've got it currently, then you start preparing for the fact that your life is changing because of it. Maybe you're not doing that properly. Maybe it's something that's too hard to believe, so the mind chatter is too much. So if there's something that you're putting out here that's really far away, maybe for an example, and I've talked about it a lot, so I understand I'm not necessarily contradicting myself. A lot of these techniques are based upon where you're at in this whole cycle, in the belief cycle and everything. But if your idea is to be with Jane, or your idea is to be with Robert, or Bill, or Chris, or Frank, if that's your dream, then cool, imagine that. But if for some reason you and Frank have a big issue, you guys got in a big fight, And every time you think and imagine of being with Frank, you keep thinking to yourself, but he hasn't forgiven me, or he's still mad at me, or because I cheated on him, or because of... So, again, too much. The mind chatter. You don't believe what you're trying to create. It's not natural for you. In order for that to be natural, maybe we need to work on the forgiveness aspect. Of course, Astral Letters recommend. I'll probably drop that link below too, as well as the Feeling Natural. But if you need to get that forgiveness process going, good place to start. The next is maybe we just get together for coffee rather than trying to get our marriage back together or try to have kids with this person that hasn't forgiven me yet. Maybe we take a step and be like, well, I'd like to just have a nice, wonderful event where he actually says, I realize you didn't mean to hurt me or whatever, right? Like some acknowledgement that this forgiveness has been granted. And maybe that's what you manifest, because now that becomes a little easier to swallow. And once you've accomplished that, well, now this other thing that's a little further out that you were initially having a hard time with is a bit more of an incremental step from where you are right now. It's like climbing a ladder. If you skip a rung, it becomes a lot more work to pull yourself. If you skip 2 rungs, well, you frankly just can't do it. Steps are the same way. You skip too many steps, it becomes very challenging to get up because of the amount of leverage it takes to lift the weight. But you go up incrementally, you can actually do it pretty quickly. And so that's one of the tricks. Find the increments, get something that you can believe, start working towards it. I do think it's a good idea to keep in mind the big picture, what you're wanting to do in the case of Frank, right? Yeah, you know you got to get forgiveness, but you are going to be together with him. Keep that in mind. Keep that imagination alive. Keep that visualization alive. But let's focus first on this quicker, easier challenge to get him to talk to you and maybe get some coffee and a chance to find out that, yeah, he's okay, he's forgiven you, like life's better. And then you can continue towards the ultimate goal. Kind of like having a 5-year plan and you want to imagine maybe 18 months out also. Like you don't just have the 5-year plan only, but you've got kind of an 18-month plan, maybe even a 6-month plan too. And it kind of gives you the idea. I love when my voice cracks. That's fantastic. It gives you that those jumps, those little the ability to hop to the next level without hopping too terribly far. And then so once you've gotten to your 6-month thing, you kind of reevaluate the 1.5 years and you're like, well, I'm actually well on my way. Let's reassess that. Let's manipulate that a little bit, make that again another 18-month cycle. And then let's give myself another 6-month cycle that's actually doable. And then again, start to increment your way to your goals, to your manifestation. You will find it's much easier to believe. You will find that once you get a success or two, it actually does start to become easier to skip a step or two. Or even from that standpoint, if I'm making, say, $100, right, and my income goes up, whatever. If I'm making $100 and my income goes up 15%, well, that's $15. All right, 15 more dollars on top of 100, really not a whole lot, but it's 15% growth. If I'm making $100,000 and someone hands me 15%, well, that's $15,000. That's a jump. That's significant. So a percentage jump can be the same, but as you get further and further up, that jump actually is incrementally, it's percentage-wise the same. Incrementally, though, can be significantly larger. Hopefully that kind of helps. Again, it's that believability, feeling natural about it. If you can get to a place where you can believe in the next step, then that next step is doable. And then after that next step, you can look a little further, and then you can maybe decide, all right, what's a good next step for me? I know where I'm trying to get to. I want to get with Frank, but I needed to get him to forgive me. Okay, now I need to get him and I to go out on a date. Now I need to maybe get to spend the night. Bam, we're back together. Now I need to get us married again, or married. Again, hold the vision. You know where you want to go. Make the jumps incremental. Kind of got to do it along the way. Rungs of a ladder. Climbing up a tree. Now you can see further out than you did before because you've taken a step up. That's what we're trying to do with manifesting. Make that step believable. Make it something you can do. Do it. And then make new steps. And you will be amazed at how quickly things start to happen. And again, kind of let go of the concept of time per se. Because there's not like this will help you manifest quicker. I mean, if you've been slowing yourself down because of things, yeah, it'll speed it up because you've been slowing yourself down. But don't look at it from the standpoint of, I need to have this in 2 days or else. That's a lot of pressure. Just work towards it. Make it a thing, you know? Again, you're trying to get to the point where in the gym, I'm going to be all ripped and awesome. Well, in my case especially, it's going to take me years and probably really have to get serious about changing my diet if that was actually what I wanted to accomplish. Me personally, I'm pretty happy with the direction I'm making in the gym. Nothing to brag about. You don't see me doing all my videos with my shirts off, but I don't look horrible, right? So there you go. That's kind of how it works. So we've all got to take our own steps, and I try to get to the gym a few times a week, and you know what I mean? So it's one of those things where make it believable, make it possible, and you will be amazed at the progress you make. Hopefully this makes a difference. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. If you like what I got going on and you got a friend that may enjoy this, please share it with them. Please comment if you got future shows that you would love me to do. I always appreciate those, and they end up in my yellow notepad, and that's a very, very good thing to have some future stuff to talk about, so always appreciate that. I thank each and every one of you. It's Dan RadioStyle. Thank you.